Kelly, welcome to PartnerUp.
Thank you for having me. Love this show. So happy to finally get a chance to be on it.
I love learning aloud with people like you, and I've loved seeing your, I hate to use the word trajectory, but it's like, I'm seeing you everywhere now. You just launched your own podcast, Unlearning, is that right?
Unlearn, yes.
Unlearn, sorry, not the ING. I have ING stuck in my head. Yeah, so you just launched Unlearn with Asher, and you've had some heavy hitters on too. Like I saw, the king of dark social, pop up there. And you're helping evangelize and lead ecosystems, with the wonderful team at HubSpot with Scott. Super active in the partnership leaders community, and you're building olive branches to other communities like Pavilion, and kicking off a lot of these cool surveys to like bring some new insights to market. So I've definitely loved like being in the community and conversation with you and seeing the impact that you're having. I kind of wanted to start the convo today, Kelly, with that like overarching topic is, you have all these various things going on, and you're kind of giving back and helping first. It's something we talk about a lot. But look back on kind of what you were doing 3 years ago and what you're doing now. Your ability to have an impact on, your career and HubSpot and things that you're working on. I think that presence is increasingly like the stock is on the rise. Talk to us a little bit about like looking through that lens, like, hey, I've been investing in building this, and it seems like there's some compound interest from those, investments. I'd love to unpack that a little bit with you, because I have a thesis that a lot of great partnerships people should be following in your footsteps, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the field of partnerships is in such a state of innovation that more we can have people who have gone down the road, whether it's because they've studied particular emotions around partnerships or led large teams. If they pass back that knowledge, the more the whole discipline is going to rise within the go-to-market function, right? And I think that the more I've learned about partnerships, the more I've studied, which I originally got into partnerships because I was leading marketing at Pandium, which was marketing and selling to the tech partner persona, right? So I had a very content-driven strategy and also being very active in the community. So that's where I really started to study and learn so many of these components together. And I think that it definitely made me realize the value of the partnerships community and the space and the way that knowledge kind of passes among different stakeholders and people who are new to the field. Which I will say, I don't feel like my path was unusual in coming from marketing. You see people coming from all different disciplines. Often you'll see it from sales, right? But marketing too. And on the tech partner side, you also see people coming from product. It's really a space where you have people,
everyone.
Yeah, bringing in different skill sets, different backgrounds, and putting it to work.
Kelly, real quick. So it kind of made me think, like, is partnerships the melting pot of SaaS? Are we the America of SaaS?
I think that's a good metaphor. Let's put it on LinkedIn and try it out.
Yeah, I think partnerships is the America of SaaS. That's a LinkedIn post that will absolutely be hitting tomorrow. So for today, for example, like, I just met a first-time partnerships person, because like the standard thing that you see a lot of is in SaaS companies that are kind of growing is you'll see that person that was kind of a Jill or Jack of all trades that gets promoted into like the first partner person, and you see them come from sales or CS. And the one that I saw, you might be interested in today, that was the first one I saw, is they were the senior manager of research. And then they become the head of partnerships, like the only partner hire. And I'm like, that's an interesting one. And I think there's a thread there, like they started in research and then they went to partnerships. And I've talked a lot for, the longtime listeners about like living in market. Like I hate getting caught in the cobwebs of like internal politics and our own KPIs, when it's like, look, what's happening in the market is what really matters. Customers, partners, communities. Maybe there's something there that like research, so to speak, is you're thinking about the market first and the community and that, and then you're going, well, how does my company fit into this picture?
Yeah, I agree. I think, if you have someone who's just an account executive, they're actually going to have a harder time than that person who was doing research to move into that role, because if you are the only partner manager at your company, you have to think very strategically, and you have to be very close to the mindset of the customer, which is why customer success is another role you see people come over from and can do well, because they understand who that customer is interacting with. What are those 15 partners, right, in their universe? And I think that partner manager only one at a company is such a hard role. And so many people get put into it and they're like, you have no resources, just go partner. So that kind of research mindset of like looking at the problem, even if they weren't researching partners like I was in my last role, just applying that framework where you really say, how can these partners connect to the strategic priorities of my company? How is the customer going to benefit from this? Hugely useful.
And when you were at Pandium, just like kind of that inflection point when you were leading marketing there, you also had launched a community, if I recall correctly, right?
I did. And I still think that community, when I left is not as able, it still exists. It's called the SAS Ecosystem Alliance, but I think in order to grow, it would need more like functional resources to be put behind it. But the idea behind that community was actually to capture that intersection for tech partnerships between product and engineering and business development. So I think a lot of us think towards marketing and sales and how do we onboard them. But the reality is for tech partners, and also when you think about some of the implementations or system integrators, being aligned with product and engineering is also really important. Like think about a platform, right? If your APIs stink, then you're not going to be able, no matter how good your business mindset is around on being an ecosystem, you're not going to be able to successfully scale. So that community was, the idea behind it is, let's find a place for those people to be in dialogue, because the current partner communities are really very focused on the BD persona.
Right, totally. And the reason why I think that's like an interesting way into the partner world is like the fact that you had a community is all of a sudden your lens became about what are these conversations happening over here, right? Not the conversations that are happening. Like, it'd be interesting to know, like, I'm always trying to figure out how much talk time is happening, not on an individual call, but like in whatever company I'm at, with the people in my company spending time internally versus externally. So like obviously customer success, account executive support, like those roles are, customer facing, and they're probably spending 50+% of their time external, at least they should be. But then there's all these other ones like product engineering, et cetera, where like very little of their time is spent externally. And yet the product roadmap is, it's not controlled by customer success or account executives. It's consistently the most argued over thing in SaaS is the roadmap, right? There's limited resources, and like how to bridge that gap. I mean, every great partnership, like truly great partnership, has some, I just had Alan Adler here, co-innovation, right? Like that's his big thing, co-innovation. It's kind of true. Like, I mean, look at HubSpot. Like, I've seen HubSpot's API come from there was literally zero APIs for CRM. So I had to build a Chrome extension to hack the DOM. So like in the browser to send a document to like show the value. And we actually had hundreds of people download that Chrome extension and use it in HubSpot. And that helped inform, how Matt was thinking about launching APIs and like working really close with those people. Like there was some co-innovation. There's something to that. I'm curious your thoughts on this, because you kind of came from the product side, and then now you're helping lead ecosystems at HubSpot with amazing, like it's just everyone in the partner and ecosystem team at HubSpot. I love, like I could just start naming people that are amazing there. Are we in a fool's errand to like, right now we're trying to partner pill, and, I'm obviously evangelizing, we're evangelizing Nearbound as perhaps this connective tissue that meets go-to-market leaders where they are. At the end of the day, though, for tech partners, if there's not some great product innovation there, is there really going to be a great partnership? Like, what's your point of view on that? Because you're seeing a lot more partner activity, with your vantage point at HubSpot.
Yeah, I think if you can't influence product and have product take that ecosystem mindset, your opportunities are going to be severely diminished. I do think you can build superficial integrations that can tie tech partners together in going to market. I don't think those are going to have as big of business impact. So I also think what you see more frequently is bad integrations. And then you have a really awful situation of going to market together to drive customers to bad experiences that they then get frustrated with and don't like. and that retention boost that you expect to see from a good integration, you can even see the opposite, right? People will churn off because the integration doesn't do what they thought it would do. It's essentially a product feature, right? And the more robust the integration, the more robust of a feature it is. So for scale, I think it's key. I do think you can still have smaller scale partnerships that are nominally tech partnerships, perhaps, and really just two SaaS companies going to market together. But you then do run the thing of disappointing, like you run the risk of disappointing the customer, even if you don't have a bad integration. Let's just say you have a really shallow one. It sends data one way, right? So then people see your co-marketing campaigns, they're talking to both of your sales team, but then they're like, well, this actually doesn't do very much. So it's a challenge.
Right. And the folks that, are coming from partner land typically aren't coming from a product or, engineering background. There's a couple unique exceptions to that are very interesting recently. I haven't gone down this rabbit hole too much on the podcast, but obviously GPT is eating the world right now. I was at the Pavilion CMO Summit a couple weeks back and got to see Kip talk with the CMO of, I believe, Carta. So it was the CMO of Carta and Kip Bodnar, the CMO of HubSpot, kind of talking about GPT. And it was a fascinating Conversation. I'd seen lots of, talked to Kip a lot, and I've had lots of conversations with him and then seen him on like the keynote stage at Inbound, but I hadn't seen him in like a casual fireside chat. And he just went off for like 30 minutes about, AI, GPT, and the future of marketing. It was really, really an awesome combo. And the reason why I'm bringing up GPT in that context, had you looked into or seen Mira, the CTO of OpenAI, her story?
I have not.
It's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So current CTO of the fastest growing product of all time. I won't even say tech company, product, like in human history. Kind of crazy. Guess what she started at OpenAI? Head of partnerships.
She was the head of partnerships?
That became CTO. Now you think about their strategy though, right? So how did they get all of that data? Like, so I'm like reading in between. I've been obviously trying every which way from Sunday to like get Mira, but she's kind of CTO of the fastest growing, company of all time. So it's probably hard to get her on a partnerships podcast, but it's like, hold on, wait a second. You started as the head of partnerships. So I'm pontificating here, but like, let's have some fun with this one, because we're kind of on this topic of, value and product and engineering. Where did they get all the data to train these models? I'd have to imagine partnerships, right?
I assume they got it from the World Wide Web, but it's a good call out. One would think that they did at least get some proprietary data sets that are not widely available. And I feel like that's something I should know the answer to, but I don't.
Right. And I'm totally pontificating. And well, it's a closed book. No one knows except, the folks on the product org and eng org, and perhaps BD org, partner org at OpenAI. So the conversational model, like, I know it's not just indexing, B2B companies and consumer companies, blog posts and website. The model feels a lot more social, like natural, like easy to talk to. And I'm just guessing that there's some, pipeline of data from the Twitters or Metas or some of those walled gardens that they were able to get access to. I mean, and then you kind of go to that next layer. Okay, they have some proprietary data. They're launching versions of GPT. And of course, the other products as well, Dolly, for images, right? Like lots of images do have a lot of licensing and rights. So I'm sure there definitely was some deals on the image training for multimodal. And then what happens next? So they get GPT up and running. Well, the headline that blew my mind 2 weeks ago was GPT connects to the internet, plugins. I mean, platform play, right? Like, so now they're becoming a destination and everyone's trying to get, a plugin into GPT. Their big crazy moment was powered by GPT, right? So like that went from 0 to 2 million Google search results in like a month, 2 months powered by GPT, which is crazy, right? So for me, I'm like, man, there's something there. Like this was, I have to think, a somewhat intentional strategy to where the power of working with other technology companies and proprietary data being API first, right? Like that was their monetization engine that their head of sales, she's kicking butt right now. The massive sales org that she's building with all the API calls and, premium access and then plugins. This is a platform strategy from Jump Street that is just such an incredible story that like product innovation is really what drove that success and partnerships hand in glove.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think, I'm sure the salesperson is doing an exceptional job, but I think the product here was so strong that it it was easy to find those partners essentially to roll out. But I think it's somewhat akin to like Stripe, right? Like there's just so many other companies that want to use the technology for their technology, and it seems that they built it in a way to make that super easy, which to your point means that they were thinking that way from day one, both from the product side, right? Because people like developers don't want to incorporate technology that doesn't work well, that is buggy, that causes problems. So building that from day one, you can see this kind of like wildfire expansion.
It's fascinating. I hate to bring this up here, but we're on the GPT thread, so mine as well. I had this fascinating. I have to turn it into a piece of content. I saw someone post something on Twitter, and I'm like, I wonder what that would work like for us. And here's what I did, Kelly. I'll try to describe it. Is I prompted GPT to do some negotiation training with me. So I was like, hey, I want you to do a series of negotiation training. So you're going to present a scenario where, you're selling something, I'm negotiating and trying to get a better price just for like the heck of it. And then I want you to rate my responses once we get to a deal. And then increase or decrease based on my performance, right? So like I went down a 2-hour rabbit hole. And here's where it ended. Here's where it ended up. It was pretty incredible training, like legitimate, like negotiations, kind of like one of my geek out topics. Like I love to study negotiation. Big fan of Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, because he's always about empathy, right? And not trying to get the win-win, but having a healthy, empathetic negotiation is like, how to make the other party solve for your problem is like the key. And what I found was every time I would steer it towards mutual value in, let's say, partnership creation, it would lean in. And then I could start to ask questions about like, hey, how might we do this? And I would take it away from like price and time. And every time my grade started to increase. So I got to a place where I was like an A, and the negotiations started getting wild. And partnerships was working every time more than any other just basic sales tactic. And then I was asking GPT, hey, why are you giving me a high grade when I'm pursuing a partner strategy versus just straight sales? The GPT model was coming back and saying like, well, here's why partnerships is a more effective strategy for the long term. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild. I'm not telling it this stuff. I didn't prompt it to do anything with partnerships. I just started organically taking it that way. And I was like, there's got to be something. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be something there. And then, the crazy part is I can ask to take that 2-hour training, negotiation, partnerships thing and summarize it into a blog post, and it can. Mind blown, right?
No, I'd be curious because I agree. I think that you do have some partner trainings being spun up more recently, like through Fernio and things like that. But especially the more like the higher you go, or I think the more niche you go, there really isn't much available yet. And you do see people asking the community, "Hey, is there a course? Is there a certification I can get?" And I feel like it would be interesting if someone tried to develop a full-on course out of that and sort of judge what it's like.
So here's the next thing that I started to do, which I'm not done with this, but it got really interesting. I'm like, I wonder if I could take a scenario where I'm trying to win and build a very strategic partnership and describe it to GPT, and it can coach me through the process. And it's kind of working.
We actually had a CEO of a AI company on our podcast, and one of the things that came up, right, is in B2B business, how is AI going to sort of overlay on our relationships and experiences, right? Because one thing she was saying is you can use it to create trust with other parties. And I find it so fascinating because normally we think about trust as coming in part from authenticity, right? But then if you're layering on AI to kind of mediate your behaviors and sort of change what you say and how you say it, it's definitely sort of an interesting hybrid of manipulation, not necessarily in a bad way, but in a very sort of intentional way of how you're interacting with other parties. So I do think the partner use case for AI is there, and it will be interesting to see, because I don't think you're the only one who is going to be thinking about and seeing it. I think product companies are going to see this and try to build something and operationalize it, which is, how do you improve your performance in business relationships with guidance from AI? And then when both sides start using it, right, then the dynamic starts to evolve as well. So
and I think my point of view on it currently is I no longer see GPT as a company level thing. I mean, like there will be companies that make a lot of money on the backs of GPT and enhance the value of their products. I actually think of GPT as an individual level thing. So being able to have threads where you're utilizing GPT almost like a coach and assistant to help you and keep you on track and keep you honest and give you feedback. And like that's been a very interesting thing that I want to democratize and evangelize out in the market. Like, look, you already have too few resources, partner individual. Like you need to be thinking about creating leverage. Like there's a reason why I remember, going back to the early days of HubSpot. One of my mentors, 3 times now, is Pete Caputa, and Pete was always telling me, so like building the business case for partnerships, it's about the unit economics, it's about CAC LTV, and what that means is that partnerships inherently have to be more efficient than other functions. Meaning, if there's going to be a target on a partner person, their quota needs to be higher, right? Like inherently. So what are the ways in which you can increase that leverage? I'm thinking of GPT in that context. Like, how do we give more to partnerships people that doesn't require 5 more years of tech transformation to get there? Like, so anyways, I'm like pulling the thread on this. Like, how could I use it to like give back and tell partner people, hey, here's how you can do this to eliminate 20, 30, 40% of the dumb work or get feedback where you're not getting it?
yeah, I agree. And I think the dumb work is a good call out, because partner people often are tasked with doing any number of both manual things operationally on their own, but also just back and forth emailing, things of that nature that really could easily be supported by AI to give you more time back so you can focus on the more strategic relationships. So I think the more you can facilitate that and make suggestions around prompts and templates that people can use, definitely would be good for the field.
Totally. I mean, like I saw Clary Wingman, they just did a beta where, you have your call recorded and it automatically sends you, the meeting notes, the next steps, the CTA, all of that drafted, in Slack or in your email inbox. You review it, make a couple edits, boom, send. And like I even hacked that with GPT and the plugins to where it was like Otter, Zapier, boom, email. I'm like, okay, that saves me 10, 15 minutes, like no brainer. So like those partner hacks, so to speak, are they're out there. Like that's the early adopters. I like playing with the pirates, right? Like the people that give us a little bit of leverage. I want to circle back now, Kelly, after the GPT tangent. It's too top of mind to not talk about it. Is going back to kind of what you're doing with Unlearn and like your remit and HubSpot and kind of like living in the market. I've been saying something that for the past few months that I just get more and more belief in the more people I talk to. And it's this statement that the way that we buy or get information today, how about even more broadly, as people, humans, is we want to talk to people who've been to the place that we're trying to go to. And, right now, I feel like I'm naturally suited to trying to go after those conversations because I'm a natural marketing person. I've led marketing orgs, I've led sales orgs, I've had the partner remit, but then I'll come across someone that like came from customer success and they're trying to partner pill, so to speak, their CRO. And it's like, well, they've never really led a sales team. And that's like kind of a hard thing to like do. And you kind of came from the marketing side and the community side, and you're obviously having sales conversations. And I think something interesting that you unlocked that I'd love to talk about is like right now you're doing a survey with Pavilion and partnership leaders and HubSpot. Like that's an interesting sort of hack, so to speak, on like you just can't show up to, sales leaders and be like, here's exactly what you need to do there. And be like, Kelly, how many sales teams have you led? It's kind of hard, but you can actually go and survey. I'd love to unpack that with you. Like, do you think that like we're moving from this? I'm trying to summarize the shift in, let's call it the eras. Like, what is facilitating the partnerships era? Here's my statement: we're moving from how questions, how do I do this, to who has done this, right? Like they're looking for who. And I think your survey approach is like, hey, here's 500 people who've said this, right? It's not the how, it's the who. And you're using, instead of an anecdote of one, like, maybe a conversation in partnership leaders, which is totally valuable, to like an aggregate, like, oh, there's some value in the who in numbers. Talk to me a little bit about that kind of phenomenon, like your propensity for like surveys and things. I've started to see you start to do a bunch of those that I think is a great answer to this question.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And while running that survey, I've also ran an internal survey of the HubSpot sales and CS team, and I was able to get 318 people to respond to it for very similar reasons, which I think if you want credibility with people in other orgs, I mean, there's two reasons. One, you have to make the effort to make sure you're not just going anecdotally and understanding where people are coming from, and it's not just the squeaky wheel, right? Because if you interact with a few people who are very vocal, you might think, okay, this is what the majority of the sales team wants to do and what they value. That may or may not be the case. And I think that that's where this more quantitative data can really help to supplement what you may have heard qualitatively. And so the Pavilion survey, similar thing, right? Like, let's talk to actual marketing and sales leaders in enough number to get like a cross section of perspectives. How do you view partnerships? What do you use them for? Do you think that they're going to lower CAC? Do you think second party data is more accurate? Those kind of questions. And I think as a community, partnerships needs to do more work to get more data on those questions, because that's what is going to empower you to go to those leaders. And as you mentioned, one other form of authority is to say, hey, I used to be a CRO. And that is going to give you a lot of credibility with the CRO or the VP of sales or whoever. But I think another way to establish credibility is to say, hey, I surveyed the people, I got the data on the community, and this is what they are saying. Like, you don't have to take my word for it. Here's the data. And I do think that that's going to be powerful, because leaders are going to take that into account, and they're going to say, okay, this is what reps prioritize. This is what they're trying to go for. This is where they see the value.
Totally. Like in context, in helping any organization build their partner program, like, I don't know, I was giving a speech at a kickoff a few weeks back, and it was about 65 marketers in a room. And I asked, hey, someone in the audience, who do you sell to? Who's your ICP? And they said, CIOs. Okay, great. How many of you in the audience have been CIOs before? No one, right? And it was obviously, right? Like, it's a room full of, it's a 2,000 person company. So it's 65 marketers, kind of like trying to like partner pill them. So the CMO is very, very partner friendly, but it's like, she's like, how do I like get my team to understand what I'm trying to articulate? And I was like, let me try and make this as simple as possible. It's like, so all of you here, what gives you the right, and I actually kind of mean that, what gives you the right to write about becoming a better CIO? It's kind of like, you're not a subject matter expert. You've never done the thing that the customer is trying to do. And that's okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a job. Obviously, CIOs are not going to become content marketers, right? They're a C-suite at an enterprise tech company that, like, there's a lot of money on the line, and that's okay. But might you not want to, let's say, write content with, like, so like data box play I've talked about a lot. Like, that's why Pete got partner-led company of the year, is how they did surveys and went out to marketing leaders and like got that perspective and highlighted them in their content. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that what you're doing with your survey approach makes a lot of sense to me. How might, let's say, a partner individual or partner leader listening today, like, think about designing a survey for their own stuff? Because like survey design is kind of its own, art and science unto itself. But I feel like getting a pulse on the current state of the union, internally and externally, and being able to use that data for answering the who question, right? If it's not me, I haven't been that CIO, but I have, here's 15 CIOs that are fantastic customers or partners, whatever, and what they're saying, that's much more credible content. But I haven't seen people necessarily using that for their own internal partner programs. Is there an opportunity there that we're missing, that like we should be evangelizing, saying like, hey, this survey play is not just something we're using in community and out there? Like, Pete did it at a data box. I'm seeing you do this now. Like, is there a path for partner people to maybe use this in their own programs?
When you're saying what I like, are you mean internal survey, like survey the other teams within your organization, not the customer, or both?
Well, maybe perhaps both, or the partners, for example. Like, survey design is probably, a good chunk of the game, right? Like, what are we trying to do a survey for? But if you're a partner person that hasn't, let's say, led a sales organization, and you're bumping up against, let's say, that sales leader that's like, source pipeline, or that's it, I don't really have time for, you, whatever, because they don't trust you. They don't understand. They don't believe that the challenges that they're going through. How might survey design like help demonstrate the ability for partners to like impact their own company's pipeline? Maybe a pulse of their internal sales team, and like, what is the current state of union of partnerships, not the CRO's perception of it.
100%. I like I said, that's something I just did at my organization. I would highly recommend doing it for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's great engagement, right? So you're engaging those reps, getting them thinking about partners, because the answer might be that they've never even thought about collaborating with partners. Or maybe there's a blocker that you don't know about that you can easily fix, right? So getting the information itself is going to be an act of engagement with that org that's pretty widespread. And the other thing is, you can take the information, and most likely there's going to be information you can utilize to talk to the leadership in terms of why this matters. But then the other thing is, you can frame your initiatives and programs around whatever those KPIs, incentives are, like with a really fine understanding of where each individual is coming from. Because any program you design has to take into account individual incentives, right? And maybe you can get those incentives changed over time, but often you can't get them changed in the short term. So you have to work with them. So I love that idea. I would definitely recommend it. And I also don't think it's a heavy lift, which is a good thing, right? Like, I don't think you need a lot of resources. You can do it on Google Forms. You don't have to go out and buy a fancy survey. I do think you should do minimal due diligence around questions, like understanding how you ask survey questions, so they're not like horribly leading. Do you love partners? They're the best. Yes, I do.
Maybe you could use GPT to coach you on how to design the best survey for this. Hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Help me design a survey for doing it that's objective and that would get a high response rate. Like, you can add those qualifiers, and then it's going to, like, it's like, okay, now I'm thinking about it's for your sales team. They're more than likely not to respond, and then it'll help you like, hey, here's the best way to promote it and make sure that you have the highest completion rate, and design some of your questions and then kind of grade it, because I'm sure it's indexed lots of publicly available surveys and results and things like that, where it's probably pretty good as a coach. So like, boom, there's a takeaway right there that you could go do right now, because I think this is actually really important. This is actually turning out to like be a phenomenal topic. Is we're out there trying to help these marketing leaders and sales leaders like drink some of the partner Kool-Aid, but doing it from the go-to-market and their perspective. But as a partner person, like, imagine sitting down like with your CRO and you're having those hard conversations. It's really your opinion versus theirs, right? Like, they just have more credibility. They're making more money than you. They're more senior than you. It's just the reality. Unless you are at the C-suite with them, that's just not where you're at. So how do you make it not about you? Like, shoot, like, hey, I did this, lightweight survey of the sales organization. I want to talk to you about what the sales team's talking about. All of a sudden, you're no longer at the table, right? If you're like, what a better place to be starting the conversation than that? Like, I'd love your input on this, Kelly. Like, the talk track that I've been using recently with CROs is I've been trying to simplify it a ton. What's your revenue target this year? 100 million. Okay, great. Where are you going to land? 90 million? About right. Everyone's kind of missing their target this year. What's your current partner attach rate? I'm like, I don't really know. It's like, give me your best guess then. It's probably 10%. Okay. Are you trying to drive that to a certain number? 20%, 30%? Well, we know it needs to be a part of my mix about 25% because we're just not going to generate the marketing volume. Budget's down, blah, 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 and outbound's not working. Okay, so you'd like to be at 25%. So here's the question, CRO. Are 25% of your sales team's activities nearbound partner activities? And then it's just the whole worldview shatters. Like literally, it's like, well, you just made that incredibly simple. I'm like, it's really that simple. At the end of the day, if you want to drive your partner attach rate and your revenue up, then your sales activities need to match correspondingly at minimum, right? So you're probably not tracking partner activity with sellers, like, genuinely, you're not looking at that. You're just like, where's my partner revenue? But you're not looking at, is the output or, is the inputs there for that output? And if you're a CRO, that is your job. It's not the partner person's job. Like, they can't track sales activity. It's your job. You have the rev ops team, you have the sales ops team. Get on that. And that way, oh, shoot, this segment, about 5% of their activities are partner related. Well, shoot, there's your problem. There's not enough activity. Like, you can't expect 2 partner people. And literally that 3-minute snippet is like, okay, yeah, it's on my shoulders now as the CRO. I don't know. I'd love your kind of feedback on that.
I love that conversation. I think if they're at all committed to the 25% number, which in my experience, and we'll see what the survey we're running says. I think that's going to be, in most cases, a weak commitment if it exists at all, in which case the motivation to move to action, often it's just not followed through. But I think if they are already bought in, essentially, not to the exact number, but to a number magnitudes off, I feel like your response is very powerful and spot on. And that type of cognitive simplicity actually makes it much more likely that they're going to act on it, because once you try to bog people down with 100 different data points and frameworks, then they're just going to block you out. So I like that.
Totally. So I think you could take that. Take, hey, here's what the sales team's saying. Here's the reality of, let's say, our partner activity. We don't know. Like, where are we going to start in order to get us there? So that 25% number to respond, because like, you definitely calling out, like, that assumes buy-in. Totally. That's probably an aspirational number to most CROs, not a, like, we're going to get there no matter what, right? Like, that 25% is, yeah, that's where I think it should be.
But even that is rare, right? Like, I think a lot of CROs are not even bought in that they need 25% of their, whatever the number attached. They're just like, yeah, maybe that's going to benefit it, because a lot of them aren't tracking it very well, so they don't really know. But it'll be interesting to see what the Pavilion and survey says when it comes back. How many of the sales leaders are already saying yes, that would be a good thing, I just don't know, or I haven't gotten there, versus I'm not even fully convinced that having 25% partner attached is going to make me better off. Because those are 2 different people, right, you're talking to, right?
Totally. When is that? Do you have a public date on when you're going to come out with that, or not yet?
We're targeting to release it early June at the Pavilion CRO Summit.
Nice. That would be fantastic. Good spot to unveil that. I have an assumption in a lot of the conversations that I'm having. I think the propensity is going to be there, the likelihood that they want it, the desire, so to speak, a lot more so than last year. That's for certain. So the results of this survey are definitely going to be something we're going to be talking about for a long time over here at Partner Hacker, because it's phenomenal, like, insight in aggregate. Because I have a ton of anecdotes from individual conversations. Kelly, this has been fun, way too fun. So Unlearned, go check it out. Awesome podcast with Kelly and Asher. We've had some amazing heavy hitters on so far. Always love seeing more in the community. Some takeaways, like get a survey going internally of your sales org, or whatever. Have GPT help you design that, and there you go. There's your partner hack of the day. Kelly, thanks so much for joining me today. Isaac is traveling back out. I'm not in the studio, so you see me at a WeWork because I had a couple of people from the Partner Hacker team in place here, and he's flying back out because I've convinced Isaac to move to St. Pete with me. So we will be doing some scheming in person and video content production. So it was a blast having you today. Thanks for holding down the fort with me as a fellow podcast host.
Thank you for having me. It was definitely a pleasure, and I'm glad we got some hacks to distribute to the community.
Absolutely. Learning out loud, the best of it. All right, Partner Up. Peace out. We will see you all next time.